Hello everyone. On the last Azur Archives, we delved into swirling cherry blossoms as things began heating up in the Sakura Empire. Today, we head north and introduce our final major player to this story, the Northern Parliament, in their debut event, Northern Overture. Don't you think snow is such a strange thing? The snow may melt, and it may freeze. It may become soft, like flowing water, or hard like adamant ice. But no matter what form it takes, its very essence does not change. Our sacred ideals have always persisted, a bastion of power within the frigid seas. Once there was a time where we fought alongside the rest of the world to push back the siren threat for the sake of humanity. But as the war ground to a halt, massive siren structures resembling icebergs began to form in our waters. As our forces were stretched thin to deal with these threats, we drifted apart from the Azur Lane. War-torn, weary, and unable to join in the operations of Azur Lane, our name would soon be associated with these words. The Northern Parliament's fleet is weak. That is what the world came to believe. An Eagle Union fleet, led by the commander, is en route to a joint operation with the Northern Parliament. As they sail, they discuss their mission: to siege a siren stronghold in the latter's waters. Following the attack on New York, wiping out such structures has become a priority, even if the area is relatively stable and peaceful. Due to its location in both Eagle Union and Northern Parliament's jurisdiction, it is difficult to go after this particular one, despite it being largely unremarkable. Until today. Their aim is to reduce the siren's ability to project power, and secure a victory that will inspire further wins. They arrive at the Aleutian defence line, and are greeted by Aurora and Parmiat Mercuria, who, after exchanging pleasantries with the fleet, exposit that outside of a certain range the stronghold won't launch any attacks. Despite that, it's rather hardy, and they haven't been able to amass a great enough force to truly be rid of it. They also explain that the bulk of the Northern Parliament's forces for this mission are currently tied up in the Arctic, and will be joining late. They are also joined by a second Eagle Union fleet that had already arrived earlier. The fleet begin their approach, unnerved by how quiet the stronghold is. Hornet suggests long-range carrier bombing, and she and Saratoga perform their drops, the bombs being stopped short by shields and air defences tearing their planes apart. They pass through the threshold, pulling back after they demonstrate the fortress's behaviour. The Northern Girls explain that the defences get tougher the further they push in, and that's why they requested help from the Eagle Union after their own failed attempts. They question why it would act this way, as it'd be pointless to act defensive if all the territory around it gets captured anyway, but they chalk it up to the sirens being the sirens and begin their push. The Union Girls lead the charge, spearheading the push through the defences, encountering and defeating new Mark III versions of siren mass-produced ships as they continue their assault, until the rapidly growing number of siren deployments forces their push to a stall. They choose to pull back, lest they get encircled. As they do, a humanoid siren appears and attacks with an undiscovered energy weapon. South Dakota rushes in to block the attack aimed at the commander, only suffering minor damage, but her radar and fire control begin to temporarily malfunction. They blast the target from afar, but as they do, the seas begin to shake, and a gigantic iceberg rises from below, separating the Union Girls from the commander and the Northern Girls. The iceberg is armed, and the Union Girls are forced to get out of range, while the commander comes to on the other side. On the other side, the paltry Northern Parliament forces find themselves overwhelmed, even with the commander's leadership, until backup arrives in the form of the Northern Parliament fleet, finally arriving in the AO. They swiftly tear through the attacking sirens before giving their greetings and individually introducing themselves to the commander, whom they transfer command authority to. As they fight on, Chapayev reports to the commander on the state of the positions, damages and supply, whilst they ponder their next move. The commander wants to regroup with the Union fleet, but with comms down he's unsure how to do that. Rossier summarises that, to be free of this newly formed Mirror Sea's influence, they must destroy its core, and they believe that is within the stronghold. The fleet also believes that the Eagle Union group has come to the same conclusion, and begins an assault on the stronghold to link up with them and take it out. After a brief snack, the Union and part of the Northern fleet finally unite, and Gangnu almost causes a friendly fire incident due to believing them to be siren pawns. They begin to link up with the commander and Rossi as part of the fleet to join the siege. Once inside, the commander asks why they didn't address such a stronghold, now appearing to be much more formidable than they first thought. To which they respond that they, like most others, were preoccupied with securing sea lanes, and much like in New York, had a hard time justifying mobilization from an area that had very little proven threat. For a second, communication gets through, only to be blocked as the walls begin closing in, and a voice speaks out ordering them to leave. They begin to fight their way out, and regroup with the rest of the arriving task force outside. Together again, they charge into the stronghold's deepest parts, and are greeted by the voice from before. Tashkent is having none of its theatrics and orders it to show itself. It complies, but only with the showing itself part. It shatters the surrounding ice and assembles it into a dome, so they have a fitting location to do battle in. The figure proclaims herself as Emitter, a previously unknown member of the low-level programs that lead the Siren Experiment branch. The fleet is surprised by the arrival of a never-before-seen siren, who launches her attack out of frustration of them not playing along with her theatrics. As the battle rages, Emitter's attacks begin weakening not just the fleet's fire control but their vision as well. To combat this, Chapayev suggests leveraging their absolute advantage in firepower and begin suppressive fire in her general direction. This strategy works somehow, and Emitter is forced to retreat, disappearing in a flash of light. As she does, the stronghold begins to sink beneath the waves, leaving the sea clear once more. They reminisce on the operation, and as they begin to think about heading home, Sovetskaya Rossiya comes to the commander with a request for him to stay in the Northern Parliament a little while longer, eventually taking him to meet its leader, Sovetski Soyuz. That's another one in the books. Definitely a much better first showing for the Soviets than what the Italians got. One of the first times we see overt cooperation between factions too, something that's become much more prevalent nowadays with the looming reunification of the Azur Lane. Looking back, this one's a little underwhelming compared to later Northern Parliament majors, which have all had massive lore bombs or implications for the story going forward, but I can excuse that. This event was focused on introducing the new faction, and it's very action heavy. There's not a whole lot for me to talk about here. And Emitter. She's here too. She's fun, but we're not going to see a whole lot of her. She's the least important of the experiment sirens. Not really a whole lot for me to comment on here. It's pretty par for the course and formulaic for this point in Azur Lane. Next time we're going to move on to one of the more infamous events, though that's not its fault, that's just a circumstance of its release. Microlayer Medley. So until then, fair winds and following seas.